I woke up to some great news today because Lamborghini has finally unveiled the Aventador successor, and this is called the Revuelto. I'm not so sure if I'm sold on the name yet, and I think that's how it's pronounced. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of the spec and tech here, and then of course jump into Photoshop, have a look at the front, side, rear, and the interior, because we need to talk about what's going on in the interior of this car. And we're going to compare it to the design changes from the original LP700 Aventador. What actually changed in this design? As you can see, it's quite a lot. So first of all, let's have a look at some of the spec and tech of the Revuelto. This is from Motor 1. So it has a new 6.5 liter V12 supplemented by 3 electric motors to produce a combined output of 1,001 horsepower. It has 13 drive modes, an 8-speed automatic dual clutch gearbox, and displays for the driver, which Lamborghini calls the co-pilot. They also say that the monocoque chassis in this new Revuelto is the first fully carbon fiber front structure ever made put in a production car. 0 to 60 takes 2.5 seconds. And 124 miles per hour, 0 to 200 takes less than 7 seconds. Flat out, the Lambo will exceed 217 miles per hour. So it's not, of course, a slow car, but again, it's a Lamborghini. You wouldn't expect anything else than that. Lamborghini says that the Revuelto is 61% more efficient and generates 66% more downforce. And keep in mind that this is in the first edition of the Revuelto. I can quite surely say that this is going to have at least 20 versions of it within the next decade or so. You can have it with 20 or 21 inch wheels, or you can opt for the 21s in the front and 22s in the rear, which is obviously what I would go for. Fatter tires in rear just makes this look so much better. So the interior, the driver gets a 12.3 inch digital readout, digital cluster, and a very modest 8.4 inch portrait screen in the middle. Great job, great idea from Lamborghini to keep the center screen small. It doesn't have to be a TV on the dash, just keep it small with the essential information that you need. We're gonna have a look more closely on the interior in just a second. However, the passenger gets a narrow 9.1 inch screen, the passenger or the co-pilot as Lamborghini calls it. So the new V12 here, it by itself develops 813 horsepower at 9,250 RPM, and you can imagine what that's gonna sound like. And you also have 535 pound-feet of torque, all without the needs of turbochargers. The battery is pretty small. You have a 3.8 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and that generates 180 horsepower in EV mode for, you know, if you wake up early, you don't want to wake up the neighbor, put it in EV mode and cruise out using your 180 horsepower. And then when you're outside, you fire up that V12. All right, guys, so let's jump into the design and let's talk about what's going on here with the Revuelto Lamborghini. So I think still the Aventador, looking at the Aventador up top, I still think that this looks very modern. What a design. It came out in I was in design school, and we actually went to the Geneva show. I think that was in 2011 when they unveiled the Aventador, and everybody was just blown away because it was such a big leap from the Murcielago, and it still has this sharp, edgy design that feels like it still works today with some upgraded headlights maybe. But even the headlights, they have this thick LED Y shape in it. It still looks modern. And remember that this Aventador I'm showing you here is the first edition, the LP700, without any specific names to it, the S or the SVJ or something like that. So I think they made a good job with this design. It's almost... We'll see if it turns out to be a timeless design, but for now, I think it definitely still feels very fresh. So looking at this redesign, or the new, the successor to the Revuelto, the thing is, I actually made a redesign of the Aventador back in, I think it was August of 2019, and I have to say, I think I came pretty close to what the Revuelto looks like. So I'm gonna pop in my redesign down here. So I made this in Photoshop, just a pure sketch from scratch to just kind of implement what the design languages of the concepts of 2019 looked like and what it could look like in a production version. A couple of details that carried over here is this section looks pretty similar to the production version. I do like that we have a big cutout for the lights now. So all this black area here with clearly visible intakes for the intercooler, and we have this big Y shape that was 100% certain to be a feature of the new Aventador, because you saw it in so many concepts before this, so putting it into production just made a lot of sense. And we also have a very simplistic lower part with these wings, and this is what I wanted to see Lamborghini do, not do anything too complex and keep these wings just being pretty simple in the lower part and have that typical Lamborghini shape where all these lines meet at this point, and then you have these inverted hood lines. Normally on a regular car, the hood lines usually go from wide up here and down to narrow in the middle, something like this. But Lamborghini's design language has always said that you need to have these lines going inverted, so from wide at the bottom to narrow up top close to the windshield, and I have that here as well, as you can see. The front end, I think it looks clean. It doesn't look too complex. It doesn't look like the concept cars. It dial it down a little bit while still keeping the main elements of the design intact. So let's have a look at the side view here. One thing when I saw I saw the camo images of the Revuelto, and I made a rendering of it, I wasn't sure about how this side graphics would work. But first of all, let's have a look at the Aventador. Let's just give Aventador some credit here for having this beautiful design with this line, typical Lamborghini design DNA, with this dip here, then going in and having the highest point being right above the front axle, and you have this almost door stop design with the overall roof line of the car. So it's almost one single line going from the front, very front of the car, over the greenhouse and back into the rear end. And I also like this intake that we had. This looks like a very classic design of an intake, and you can see that it definitely changed this area for the Revuelto down here. So I wasn't sure that this was gonna work, because this to me looked pretty static to me. We have almost a clear zigzag pattern going, and it kind of creates, it doesn't have any movement front or back, because these lines are pretty much all the same length, and it doesn't pull the car to either the front or the rear. But I think having this black graphic that we have here kind of helps with the dynamics and pulls the graphics a little bit to the forward, and reduces this static feeling that we had with all the camo on when you couldn't see the graphic colors underneath. The main features of a Lamborghini are still 100% intact in the Revuelto, and you can see the evolution from the Aventador. The roofline, you can pretty much copy paste the roofline. It's almost the exact same roofline like we have on the Aventador, which it should be exactly like that. We also have the same line here going up. I'm not sure if this is actually a brand new section for the Revuelto going from the Aventador. It feels like it's very close in size and in shape. I'm talking about the greenhouse, the glass area of the new car. I kind of prefer the Aventador in the rear end, because we have this line cutting into the body, and here it kind of goes upwards. I do prefer having it go down. It looks more aggressive. I think it makes it look more planted as well. We're gonna have a look at the rear view right now, and here you can see the 22s in the rear and the 21s in the front end. I think it looks absolutely fantastic, and we have a typical hexagonal Lamborghini design of the spokes down at the bottom. So looking at the rear view, this is, I would say, maybe the most dramatic change for the new Revuelto down here. We can see that this piece that we have on the Aventador, this bumper, is no longer there. Instead, this turned out to be one massive diffuser at the bottom. So the entire bumper, if you happen to reverse into a car, what's going to hit first is going to be the diffuser of the car. You want to be very careful when you're reversing your Revuelto. And then you can see that the exhaust pipes down here, quad exhaust pipes, even though it looks like a big single one on the Aventador, there's actually 4 exhaust pipes in here. They now moved them up to be in between the taillights. And I think this just makes it look so aggressive and so unique. Also, the shape of the tailpipes just look very Lamborghini-ish, and I think this pattern is probably going to be all over the car, specifically in the interior, the vents, and so on. And we have the Y-shape taillights here as well, which was also one of these features that was definitely going to make it into the production version. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with the S, the SV, and the SVJ, the rear ends, if the normal car looks this aggressive. Yes, we're gonna have some very cool wings on the SVs and the SVJs and so on. But other than that, I'm not sure how you can make this any more aggressive than what it is right now. Just look at how exposed the rear tire is. Since we don't have a bumper, you can see the rear tire almost up halfway of the entire height of the bumper just looking at it from a straight rear view. Alright, last but not least, let's have a look at this interior. Same thing here. I just think the Aventador was such a good design, because this to me still feels very modern, very fresh, since we have a digital gauge cluster right here with a nice housing for it, and we have a nice screen here at the middle. And these details on the dash itself, they feel like they have a good connection to the exterior design. And as I said, the exterior design still to me looks very modern. That means that the interior also look modern. The only detail that kind of dates this interior are these air vents. So if you update these and turn them into something more stylish, then I think this Aventador interior would still actually work today. I do like that we have a bunch of physical buttons right here in the control panel of the Aventador. So looking at the new one, we have the 8-inch screen. I really like that they didn't make this into a 14-inch like TV right here. That would totally ruin the interior for me, specifically when you have it in a big V12 Lamborghini. However, looking at the gauge cluster, you can't really see if this is a housing or if this is just a panel, but this is in fact just a screen with some carbon fiber framing to it. Normally, I would rather have a housing like we have in the Aventador. I still prefer to have this deep housing that we have here, but we still have sort of a housing for the new Revuelto interior gauge cluster, because this carbon fiber actually sticks out above this screen, creating some shade for it. And that's the main problem I have with these screens today. When you're driving and there's just a little bit of sunshine outside, it's really hard to see the contrast of the screens. I don't understand why car manufacturers don't put just a little cap above it to kind of keep it in the shade, but it looks like they actually did something like that here in the Revuelto. I also like, this is what I'm talking about. So you see the air vents up here. This is definitely a very futuristic integration or design of the air vents. So this definitely brings the interior forward a couple of decade or so, which it actually does. It is a decade newer. And I love what's going on here. It's such a cool design for the air vents. I've never seen anything like this before. Here you have this small or smaller display for the co-pilot, which can see all the speeds you're doing and complain about how fast you're going at all times. There are not as many physical buttons in the center console here, but I'm glad that they kept the start button and stuff like this. It looks like they have some sort of buttons in this area, so they kept some of it, but I guess that all the 90% of the functions are still gonna be managed by the center display, which I think is maybe okay in this case. I don't know. I haven't tried this new system, so I'm not sure how responsive it is and so on, but you still have to look down from your driver, from the road, to see what you're hitting. It doesn't matter what type of touchscreen you're using, that's always going to be the case. So I'm very excited to see this in real life, because every time you see a car online, you see it in photos, you see it in videos, and then you see it in real life, and it can completely transform the way, at least I think, about the design, and specifically the proportions. When you have it in front of you, it just gives you a different vibe. But overall, I think this is a very cool design by Lamborghini, kind of expected to look like this. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, it actually means that it's a good thing. This is what I wanted to see from Lamborghini, and I can't wait to see out on the roads.